Hello and welcome to Freyman CPA. Thank you for your interest in our firm. I am Greg Freyman, owner and CEO of Freyman CPA. So today I'll discuss with you what a typical onboarding engagement entails for individual tax preparation. So when onboarding with us, what a typical client will experience is they will communicate with us what it is that they're seeking us out for, whether that's individual tax preparation, whether that's tax planning or specific tax research. Perhaps it can be assistance with past filings. In this scenario, we're just going to discuss a basic individual tax preparation for the current year. So once we get on the phone with you and assess where you are currently for this year's filing, we will provide you with a rough estimate of what we expect it would take to complete your return. And that can be anywhere from 2 to 5 hours, depending on the complexity of the return. Now, if you're a brand new client, in which case this situation is actually discussing, the first 2 hours of that engagement alone is just going to go into the front end investment of the work. So that entails understanding your past filings, what it is that has happened, and looking at prior year returns. Also discussing with you what your future outlook is like, perhaps discussing strategies that you'd like to see implemented. So that would be more of a discovery process as well, besides just doing the actual tax prep. So that's the front end of the investment for a brand new client. So there's that initial assessment of what's happened. Now the next phase would be the actual onboarding, which is more of the administrative function. So that's handing you with the documentation to commence the engagement. It is a formal process at all accounting firms, and that would entail for us to send you our engagement letter, which spells out our responsibilities along with your responsibilities, a privacy policy statement, a request for deposit, and a tax organizer to basically complete formal questions about what has happened in your current year, and as well as a guide to get you organized and to go through all your documents to ensure that you're sending us everything so that way the return is complete. So those are basic onboarding processes, administrative tasks that we undergo. Of course, we'd also give you access to our cloud portal where we would exchange that information securely and communicate with you along the way as this is all happening. From then on, once all the formalities and administrative functions take place, we now put everything through processing. So we would need to review your documents. Some of these documents are not even the tax documents themselves, but they're preliminary documents that deal with you as a person, as an individual. And those would be identification documents like your birth certificates, like social security cards, or other proofs of identification that might deal with children and so on to prove for dependency. So there could be a whole host of other onboarding documents, of course, prior returns and so forth. From then on, we're actually doing the data entry for all the preliminary information. We need to feed in all this data into our tax software from scratch. We have to put in the dates, the socials, the names, email addresses, and all sorts of other important information that will help us make sure that you're being put into a streamlined process. That streamlined process will help us also send you informational newsletters down in the future, and will also ensure that there's an easier way of communicating with us going forward. So that's where about 2 hours of time at the very least is absorbed for a brand new client. That is why we say that our first year client typically will have higher fees, but we're one of the only firms where the following year our clients will actually will see a decrease in their fees because all that front end work has been done. We already know your situation, we know your background, what you're expecting from us, what has happened in the prior years and so on. So there's no need for us to redo all that work. All that preliminary information is there, and it rolls also from 1 year to the next year with our tax software. Obviously, that's the big part of the engagement. And then once we're in that actual tax preparation phase for that first year, now we're working with actually waiting for you to send us the tax documents that are pertinent for that year. And that'll include your basic W-2s, your 1099s and worksheets and all sorts of other information that we need to complete the current year taxes. So once that's completed, that's when we're pretty much almost done with the return. And as you're submitting us information, We're actually sending you communications and asking for maybe more information or follow-up on items that aren't very clear or perhaps needed additional digging. So depending on what's happening, that can go back and forth a number of times. Then eventually we'll get to a point where everything's been pretty much finalized and we've reviewed the return with you together. We've basically presented you with the return and the final outcome, and that we've discussed the tax liability. Perhaps we've discussed potential tax strategies that can still be taken advantage of in this current tax year for prior years, and so on and so forth. So there's still that ending, finalizing phase. So once everything's finally done, that's when we send you the return for signature to you, your spouse, if you're married, and everything typically will go through our DocuSign, through electronic signature, where everybody will sign off. So you and your spouse will sign off electronically, as well as us as return originators and tax professionals. Once everybody's signed, that return is completed, it's finalized, and we will then store it in our cloud system where you will have copies of that return for as long as you're our client and going forward. So that's basically the gist of it all. One perk that's also available to most people these days when they're working with a tax professional software is that they receive a official confirmation email to everybody that's on the return. Both spouses will receive a confirmation if they're married as to whether the returns were accepted by the tax authorities. And that's a great thing to know, because sometimes, believe it or not, people will actually come to us and they might have received a notice or something from a tax authority saying, hey, I filed my return and I know my accountant filed it for me, but I haven't actually received any confirmation. Now I have this letter from the IRS or what have you saying I didn't file my return, but I was told that it was filed and this and that. So that all can be circumvented with professional tax software. We use UltraTax, which is Thomson Reuters. It is top of the line software. Many of the big companies use it, and it's actually the best software. It's really top notch. It helps us make sure that the returns are very accurate. So there's definitely value in there for you. And as mentioned, it will trigger automatic notifications to our clients that the return's been accepted, and those notifications are coming from the tax authorities with confirmation numbers. So you can take that to the bank. You know that your return was accepted. We get that confirmation too, so we know that your return's been accepted and everything's good. That's when we're finalized. And after, obviously, once we're finalized, we'll send you a final bill, and then we'll see you again next year, unless some other question comes up. Our door is always open. Typically, people will still communicate with us afterwards if there's any follow-up. And a very common example of follow-up would be in the quarterly installment due dates. And again, we send out newsletters and things of that nature, so that way our clients are always up to date with the latest developments, or they're getting reminders as to installment due dates and anything that's important to their tax situation. So anyway, thank you for your time. I know this has been a pretty long video at 8 something minutes, but this definitely will help you understand how we go about the process. It's a uniform process. It's a process we've developed over the years, and it works great. So I welcome you. I hope to see you as our client for many years to come. If you have any questions, our doors are always open. Please feel free to reach out and let us know how we can best help you. Signing off, Greg Freyman, Freyman CPA.